So, welcome to TheDustyFeet.com because this is a place where we can safely explore the endless ways of God and the interconnection of His creation, where belief understandings, they may be challenged, divine misunderstandings, they may exist in traditional teachings, they just might falter as we pursue connection, context, and community with God and each other here in an environment of grace and love. So, feel free to journey around the space. Explore. We have many different topics for discussion. Outside the class, Sons of the Father, the Bible Project, Aleph Beta, Follow the Red String, and more. So lend your ear, then lend your voice. Join a conversation, start a conversation, ask questions. Because on this journey, you're probably around folks that just might be pondering the same thing. Community that can build and connect. So come in and join us. And welcome to The Dusty Feet. And good evening. It's May 2nd, 2023. We are continuing our Matthew series with Tim Mackie with episode 32, Signs of the Times, part 2 of 3. Yeah? This way, doing things. We can watch the videos before we begin chatting. Hope to keep these to around 15 minutes or so. Easy to catch, easier to catch up on. Let's get with Outside the Class. In the description below are links to all of the audio, video, and source documents that we use here in the Dusty Feet. We want to make sure that any material we use here is properly credited to those folks who work so hard to bring it to us. Without their efforts, the learning we do here does not happen. And remember on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and click that bell icon if you want a reminder. And again, it is expected that you watch the reference videos first to get a context for this discussion and, of course, to hear the perspective of the originator. On TheDustyFeet.com, the Outside the Class section, we have this entire Matthew series thus far. Each of the source videos for all of our discussions are posted there in advance. And of course, as always, links are also in the description below. So, if you have not yet, pause this, either go to TheDustyFeet.com or click on the link in the description below. When you come back, we can chat. And we're back. So, again, I want to make it kind of clear as we begin that I'll be mentioning, discussing some points that'll probably be challenging for some. And I suspect that it will divide the room at times. But my intent is to share what I currently believe and what I currently understand about the kingdom of God, its concepts, both narrow and wide. Okay? So, remember when we left off, we just revisited the impassioned plea to the people by Moses in Deuteronomy chapter 30, right? One to reflect upon, especially with the misconceptions about God's ways in our current day. This has so much in common with Jesus. Because keep in mind, as you listen to the expectations of God and the expectations of the people, that those are the ones that choose to follow God. We see so many connections to Jesus. Even a mention that what would happen to those that did not follow God. For the record, I'm compelled at the end of the chapter in Deuteronomy, this chapter 30, up for scholarly debate, of course, that this is an added text. It's a latter reflection of the truth of the pleas from Moses. Even with that, it still bears the truth of the prophet. Jesus pleads with God's people, reminds them of the ways and that they can do it as well. He reminds them of the Big Ten, that they are, but that they are they're really more wrapped around the community commitment of two things, right? Love God with all you are and love your neighbor as yourself. It's that as yourself that we like to forget. We often dismiss that. But Moses, he also has, like Jesus, a 3-day event to do his time for the community that had been gathered on the footsteps of the mountain so many years ago. Both of them, Moses and Jesus, had a target audience. Same one, actually, and they talked about the Father's ways. Neither are concerned about the actions of the surrounding nations, but the actions of the followers, right? Because both are declaring a kingdom of God. One is going to be with a physical land, the other, a land with no borders. Both were not concerned with the surroundings of the day because those were always for God to handle. Yet both were very much committed to the commitment of the community that chose to follow God in his ways. So that's a stretcher that both were expressed in a sense, yeah? Because I'm more and more compelled that our separation from those that were the original followers of God, right? Because that's more akin to a civil war. But like in this circumstance, it's borderless. Because we have split the kingdom. We have created a rift. And in that, we, like those that thought they were doing God's thing, they led a revolt that brought on the destruction of the very thing they were trying to save. That we have done damage to our borderless community, that we've shattered those that are part of this borderless kingdom. Do you know both of the kingdoms had the expectation of a Messiah? One that would rule it as God intended? Those in Jesus' day, it's rather obvious of their expectations. And for sake of discussion, it seems ours can pretty much be the same. Because both want an end that brings about a beginning. The interesting thing maybe is that while we wait for the Messiah, while they wait for the Messiah, because that I'm dressing them and us, then and now, yeah, that maybe we both miss the living everyday part. Jesus has the reminder of the community commitment in Matthew 22, right? Starts in 36. This teacher, which is the great commandment in the law. And he said to them, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and foremost commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend the whole law and the prophets. It saddens me, but does not surprise me that we like to pick and choose so much, work at what fits us. Yeah. So how many commandments are there? Really? Huh? How many are there? 613 have been postulated. But I've also heard it postulated that there are only two, verse 37 and verse 39. Yet, we seem to glance right over verse 40 for the context. Yeah. That all of the commandments, they hang under those two. Um, you know, this isn't the time for the discussion of all of that. I just need a reminder, like Moses, Jesus was reminding them in this context that it was the teachers of the day that they were missing something. Yeah. So, so we're in the signs of the times, and we have Moses with his declaration again in Deuteronomy 30, and Jesus here. Both are referencing destruction. Yeah. I really enjoyed Tim's visual reference of Hebraic prophecy that there's a multi-layered outward view. Because one of the things that we often forget about in Hebraic prophecy, and I don't remember if he mentions it or not, is that the purpose of it is for it not to happen. That the prophecy is declared so that things would change here and now, and that the course of history would then change. Don't do this. Stop what you're doing, because if you persist, this could happen. But our thoughts, they're backwards. Because we're looking for the very thing that we should be actually trying to prevent. We do not want this to happen. We know that God's will be had, and he constantly reminded his followers that the destruction was there for those that choose different ways, right? Jonah is a fantastic example, right? Of a prophet declaring something to the people, but this time they listened and things changed, even with an unwilling prophet, right? Because he wanted the destruction. Ironically, they're asking how soon Jesus will, the Messiah, be in charge, because they're wrapped up in this time of ours will end. But his answer is something that they should look out for in their generation. Because in this point, he's talking about the temple, right? Because it did play out. But this was a Hebraic prophetic word. So maybe it really does illustrate the visual that Tim mentions, right? Those layers of foothills and mountains. Because where we are is always relative to our view. Let me throw in a small twist. One, first, that the view is 360. Second, that the view back, that could look very similar to the view ahead. We are where we are. We are when we are. And as much as I enjoy the thought of the return of the Messiah, I'm just as much compelled by the thought of being that actual generation that reaches the tipping point. That my life choices in those days would not stave off the declaration that this is the time, the end of the things as we know it. Remember, I'm an upside down thinker, and I'm not compelled that our days and our lives are not unimportant, that they are very important today, and that they do have an impact on the future. For Tim's picture, for the near foothills and the far off mountains. We have from Jesus's time until today, so far, we've had so many times of this must be the time. And to the discredit of our torn apart community, many have declared it the end of times, often killing in the name of God, or at least Jesus, anyways. Remember, the road of Rome is Rome's choice. They will do what they will do. It's our path that's supposed to be different. Our job is not to remind Rome that they are Rome, and it's not to tell others, look, there's Rome being Rome. I'm personally more compelled to the thought that We're supposed to show folks the very unRome way of life. That those two commandments, they're the purpose of my life. But seems that same thing came from the garden and it just moved onwards. Okay, so now we're set up for the signs of the times with prophets and context and paradigm shifts as we wrap it up in part 3. Yeah. What a point to ponder. Like the other one, I'm going to wrap us back to this beautiful picture. Foreground, foothills, the mountains. Where are we? And is that a looking forward picture or looking backwards picture? Remember, it's a 360. Now, thanks for with us today on Outside the Class on the Dusty Feet.